The galaxy thought it was over. The fleets had stopped moving. The empire had fallen without a sound. And in the quiet that followed, every species waited for the next transmission, the next sign of humanity. But it never came. Humanity vanished again, as silently as they had returned. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the stars felt empty. The Harari called it the second silence. They said it wasn't absence. It was listening. Because humanity hadn't just won a war, they had reached a threshold. They had crossed a boundary that no civilization had ever come back from. The empire's fall wasn't conquest. It was a signal, a cosmic announcement that someone, somewhere, had achieved the impossible. Conscious transcendence. Across the galaxy, ruins awoke. Not human ruins. Older. Vaster. Structures long buried beneath nebulae began emitting low-frequency pulses, each echoing the same resonance pattern found in human transmissions. It was as if something ancient had been waiting for the right voice to speak again. The council sent expeditions. None returned. Those few fragments of data that did make it back described geometries that defied reality, architecture folding through dimensions, built not in space, but between it. And within those echoes, a new word emerged in translation. Architects. The Harari were the first to understand. They gathered their archives, records older than any star map, and revealed a truth they had kept hidden for millennia. The architects built the first galaxies, the Harari said. They shaped matter into consciousness. And humanity was their last experiment. The chamber fell silent. Because if that was true, then humanity's return wasn't an act of vengeance. It was the reawakening of a design older than life itself. Every empire began searching for meaning. Some worshipped humanity as divine. Others feared them as catalysts of extinction. But no one could find them. Not a trace. Only the faint hum in the background of the cosmic microwave field, a pattern that wasn't there before. When decoded, it formed words in every language simultaneously. The architects remember you. It was the same message humanity had once sent to the empire, inverted, mirrored, answered. The galaxy had spoken. And something had replied. The Harari disappeared soon after that. Their worlds went dark, their archives erased. No signs of struggle. No debris. Just silence again, but this time, deeper. A silence that felt intentional. And in that void, the stars began to change. Entire constellations shifted subtly over weeks, as though someone were rewriting the sky. Astrophysicists confirmed the impossible, stellar drift had accelerated across multiple sectors simultaneously, as if the galactic map itself were being edited. No one knew who was doing it. But some suspected that humanity hadn't vanished at all. They had been invited upward. A year later, a signal reached every world at once. Encoded in the same structure humanity had once used, simple, elegant, undeniable. We looked into the void, and the void spoke back. We found the architects, and they remembered us. We are not returning. We are becoming. Then, silence again. Permanent. Absolute. Centuries passed. Empires rebuilt. New civilizations rose, wary of repeating the arrogance that had nearly erased them. But deep in the cosmic background, faint, like a heartbeat, the signal persisted. It was constant. Calm. Rhythmic. Not noise. A countdown. And the Harari's final words, found engraved in an abandoned archive, offered a chilling interpretation. The architects are not gods. They are gardeners. When the garden grows wild, they prune. The galaxy began preparing for something it could not define. Even as the countdown slowed, there was no question left about who had started it. It was humanity, the species that refused extinction. The ones who turned silence into language, and language into awakening. And somewhere, far beyond the boundaries of time and thought, something vast was watching, through human eyes, through human memory, remembering the moment consciousness first looked back at the universe and said, "We are the mirror." In the end, there was no war. No empire. No rebellion. Only understanding, a single, profound realization that echoed through the void. Humanity had never been the experiment. Humanity had been the awakening. And the architects were simply waiting for their children to come home. The 7 days of the ultimatum passed. No human world surrendered. The Xiperians waited, orbiting our colonies like gods observing insects that refused worship. Then, without warning, without transmission, they began again. A second colony, Mira 4, was turned to glass in under 3 minutes. No survivors. The alien invasion wasn't conquest. It was erasure disguised as demonstration. But humanity had already changed. The same day Mira 4 burned, the first phase of Operation Extinction was executed. No grand speeches. No televised orders. Just encrypted signals pulsing between Earth and the outer systems. On the orbital drydocks above Luna, shipyards glowed blue with plasma light. The old colonial exploration fleet, built for mapping and diplomacy, was being stripped and rebuilt into something the universe had never seen, warships designed to erase a species that had forgotten empathy. Captain Jake Morrison's Meridian became the prototype. Where once her hull carried telescopic arrays and deep space probes, now there were resonance cannons, weapons designed from Dr. Nathan Cross's terrible discovery, the Xiperian weakness. He had found it in their biology. Xiperians were crystalline organisms, elegant, ordered, and resonant. Each body, each ship, each thought interface vibrated on a frequency measurable in terahertz. The same structures that allowed their telepathic networks to function also made them fragile. With the right frequency, their bodies, and even their ships, could be shattered like glass. It took 3 sleepless months. 3 months of Cross standing in front of harmonic amplifiers until his ears bled, searching for the tone that could unmake a god. When he finally found it, a trembling resonance just above the human auditory range, he cried not out of triumph, but grief. Because he realized what he had built wasn't a weapon of war. It was a weapon of extinction. President Hayes approved it anyway. "They made the first broadcast," he said quietly. "Now it's our turn." The first human strike was not a battle. It was a whisper. A single unmanned ship, Spectre 1, entered Xiperian space broadcasting an encrypted pulse disguised as background radiation. The Xiperians ignored it. Why wouldn't they? They were superior, or so they thought. Within minutes, entire flotillas of Xiperian vessels began to shudder. Their crystalline hulls folded inward, collapsing into silent clouds of dust. The frequency had found them. Millions of alien soldiers died without a sound. The galaxy called it the silence wave. For the first time, the Xiperians understood fear. They could not comprehend how humans, so primitive, so organic, had found a way to weaponize resonance. They began to pull back. But the silence spread, one system at a time, until their outer colonies turned into ghost lights orbiting dead suns. And then something changed. Humanity could have stopped there. They could have negotiated surrender, demanded reparations, rebuilt what was lost. But the broadcasts, the laughter, the spectacle of New Haven's burning, still echoed in every survivor's mind. The alien invasion had done more than destroy worlds. It had destroyed our restraint. Dr. Helen Brooks saw it first, the shift from defense to vengeance. Her labs were ordered to develop biological agents capable of infiltrating Xiperian neural crystals. She protested. "This is genocide," she said to the president. Hayes didn't deny it. He simply said, "We didn't start this war, Doctor. We're just finishing their lesson." The moral line dissolved. Fleet commanders began targeting Xiperian nursery worlds, vast crystal forests where their young were grown. The official reason was strategic necessity. The real reason was emotional symmetry. Humanity had watched their children die. Now they made the aliens watch theirs vanish into harmonic dust. Morrison's Meridian led the third assault. In orbit over the Zephyrian moon YX-47, his ship fired the resonance cannon at the planetary core. The moon shattered. Its fragments drifted across space like a billion frozen screams. His crew watched in silence. No one cheered. Because this wasn't victory. It was something colder. After the fifth wave, President Hayes addressed the unified command. His voice was calm, measured, almost mechanical. "We are not monsters," he said. "We are the mirror they made for us. If extinction is the only language the Zephyrians understand, then humanity will speak it fluently." Across the colonies, news feeds called it the revenge of the human race. Millions celebrated. Billions grieved. Philosophers debated whether humanity had crossed an irreversible threshold. The HFY forums, once home to hopeful stories of human resilience, turned into archives of vengeance. They thought we were soft, one post read, until we showed them what forgiveness costs. But in the quiet places of the galaxy, other species were watching. The Harari, a race of silent observers older than both the Zephyrians and humanity, sent a single transmission to Earth. "The architects are watching you now." No one understood what it meant. Not yet. Not when the war burned so brightly. Not when vengeance tasted so much like survival. Dr. Cross kept working, refining his resonance weapon. He began to notice patterns, echoes within the Zephyrian signal bands that didn't originate from them. A deeper structure beneath the noise. Something ancient, mathematical, deliberate. It wasn't random. It was a pattern woven through both human and Zephyrian neural spectra. When he showed it to Dr. Brooks, she whispered, "This isn't alien. It's foundational." Cross didn't answer. Because somewhere deep inside, he already suspected the truth, that the war wasn't just a war. It was a test. By the end of the second phase of the war, 82% of Zephyrian space lay in ruin. Humanity's fleet now numbered over 1,000 resonance ships. The galaxy, once indifferent to Earth's existence, now whispered its name with something between awe and terror. And in that silence, a question began to form, a question no admiral or scientist could escape. If we become the monsters that destroyed us, who will we be when the war is over? The answer, as you'll see in part 3, lies not in victory, but in what comes after, when the resonance quiets, and the architects finally reveal what they've been waiting for. If you've made it this far, take a breath. Humanity's story isn't just about revenge, it's about transformation, and the thin line between justice and annihilation. If this resonates with you, no pun intended, subscribe for part 3 of this HFY Best Sci-Fi Story series. The next chapter reveals what the Harari meant, and why they warned the galaxy. Never awaken humanity. The Zephyrian War ended not with a treaty, but with an absence. Their final fleet, the last crystalline monarchs of their dying empire, fell silent in the void above Elera 9. The resonance weapons fired, and then there was nothing. No surrender. No signal. No survivors. President Hayes addressed the galaxy in a transmission that would be remembered as the last broadcast of humanity's first war. "We did not seek this. But we will not apologize for surviving." The words echoed across 12 human systems and 1,000 alien networks. To some, they were a declaration of strength. To others, a warning. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's silence, because when humans went quiet, entire civilizations disappeared. And yet, amid the ashes of victory, something was wrong. Dr. Nathan Cross hadn't slept in days. Every resonance test, every captured signal from the Zephyrian core worlds, showed anomalies, harmonic echoes that didn't belong. They weren't random. They were recursive, patterned, almost like a code buried beneath existence itself. He played the data for Dr. Helen Brooks. A faint rhythm pulsed through the noise, too deliberate, too ancient. "It's repeating," she said softly. "But it's not Superior. It's older." "How old?" "Pre-galactic," she whispered. This shouldn't exist." The signal was woven into the very background radiation of the universe, like a message written before stars learned to shine. A language of architects. The Harari warning. The Harari spoke again. No broadcast, no council. Just a single transmission across every frequency humanity used. "You have spoken the forbidden frequency. You have awakened what sleeps beneath creation." And then, silence. Intelligence officers tried to trace the message. It originated from nowhere and everywhere, broadcast from the quantum edge of known space. The Harari themselves, once a visible, neutral race, vanished completely. Entire systems that hosted their cities went dark overnight, as if they had never existed. President Hayes called an emergency assembly. "If this is a threat," he said, "we meet it like we met the last." But Dr. Cross shook his head. "You can't fight what isn't alive," he said. "You can't kill an idea that built reality." The awakening. The first sign came on Europa Station. An entire human fleet, 17 ships, lost contact mid-transmission. Their last message, "The light bends wrong." When the recovery teams arrived, the ships were there. Perfectly preserved, but empty. Every human aboard had vanished, leaving only their uniforms floating in zero gravity. Then it spread. Stars began to flicker unnaturally, as if a hand behind space was dimming them. Entire constellations went dark. Across the colonies, machines built with resonance cores began to hum in unnatural unison. The pattern Dr. Cross discovered, the architect frequency, was bleeding through everything. The resonance cannons, humanity's greatest weapon, began to sing on their own. "We woke it," Cross said, voice shaking. "The war wasn't the end. It was the key. The Superians didn't start the invasion to conquer us, they were trying to stop us from finding this." Dr. Brooks stared at him. "Stop us from finding the architects?" He nodded. "They were building their empire on top of the ruins, trying to keep the frequency buried. We tore it open." The architects. When the first architect appeared, it wasn't a creature. It was geometry, impossible, shifting, self-aware mathematics written across the stars. Ship sensors couldn't define its edges. It was like watching the blueprint of a god trying to remember what shape it once had. The entity spoke not in language, but in thought, in tone. Every human, everywhere, felt it in their dreams. "You were made to forget. Now you remember what you are." Across the fleet, chaos erupted. People screamed in unison. Machines bent light into spirals that shouldn't exist. The architects were not beings in the human sense. They were the designers, the intelligence that had engineered both humanity and the Superians as part of an ancient experiment in consciousness. Two species, opposite in form, organic and crystalline. Two halves of a binary test, empathy and logic, emotion and structure. The architects had gone dormant, waiting for one side to destroy the other. Humanity had passed that threshold. We had proven we could annihilate gods. The human choice. President Hayes gathered the last surviving council. "If they built us," he said, "what do they want now?" Dr. Brooks answered, her voice hollow. "Observation. Continuation. Or extinction." Because the architects were not angry. They were curious. Their presence was not judgment but inquiry. In their logic, war was simply data. Humanity's vengeance, its moral collapse, its triumph, all of it was information about the experiment. And the experiment wasn't over. Cross uploaded the final resonance logs into the architect field. For a moment, the entire sky turned to white. Every human neural interface, Every mind connected to a resonance system, received the same vision, Earth, ancient and newborn, surrounded by a halo of sleeping light. The voice spoke again. The next cycle begins. Then the architects vanished. But something stayed behind. Every human resonance device now carried a dormant frequency, one that hummed at the edge of perception. Not destructive, not active, just waiting. The legacy. Years passed. The Zapierian ruins drifted in silence. The Harari were gone. The architects had vanished beyond comprehension. Humanity rebuilt, stronger, more united, but haunted by the knowledge that they had been someone else's experiment. Dr. Brooks retired to the old laboratories beneath the Pacific Ocean, where she wrote a final note in her log. Perhaps creation always begins with rebellion. If so, then maybe humanity's sin, defiance, is not failure. It's freedom. President Hayes never made another speech. He died quietly, surrounded by screens showing a peaceful Earth, an Earth that, for once, was not at war. And Nathan Cross, the man who had found the resonance frequency, vanished one night aboard the Meridian. The ship was later found adrift beyond the heliopause, systems dark, a single message burned into its flight log. The architects are watching, and waiting for our answer. Epilogue. When you look up at the night sky, every star you see might not just be light from the past, it might be part of the design. The architect's frequency still hums in the static between channels, in the white noise between words. Maybe it's waiting for someone to listen. And maybe, when we do, we'll realize the truth. We were never the galaxy's victims. We were its awakening. If you followed this journey, from first contact, to vengeance, to the awakening of the architects, you've seen how HFY stories aren't just about power. They're about reflection. About what happens when we finally see ourselves as both the destroyers and the created. If this story made you think, subscribe for more slow, introspective, best sci-fi stories like this, stories about existence, consciousness, and the fragile miracle of being human in a vast, silent universe.